I didn't have the financial ability. I didn't have the leadership structure. And it was just one bad thing after the next, after the next, after the next. I had to come back to store one and address the reality of we now it's now or never. Like it was a pivotal moment where this could take us out. We were behind on a lot of things. And when your back is up against the wall and you have nowhere to go, that's the best time to start moving forward. And that's what we did.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of the Lift Your Shop podcast. I'm Kelsey Outram with Lift Auto Repair Marketing, and today we have another amazing guest. We have Joe Valind out of the Greater Milwaukee area with his Auto Safety Center shops. He has 4 shops, amazing ones that we're going to be able to chat about. But Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Joe, to kind of get us kicked off, everyone always has an interesting story about how they got into the industry and why auto repair. Because again, auto repair is not for everyone. And I think it's definitely not for the faint of heart. A lot of hardships and struggles that people go through. But Joe, how did you get introduced into auto repair? How did your story begin?
Sure. I think, probably resonates with a lot of people who got in the industry. In my friend group in high school, we got our license and we got cars and we started to get into making cars go fast. And that was like a huge hobby. And we would spend our weekends, modifying our cars and working on our cars, and didn't have a whole lot of money. So we're fixing them as well. And it kind of spurred from there into like, I think I might want to do this. And so I did, got a job at the shop I now own. And I was just an apprentice. So I would sweep the floors. I would do tire repairs, got to do some alignments. And honestly, the biggest thing for me at that point was I enjoyed making the cars, fun, loud, fast. Mm-hmm. But I realized that auto repair, it isn't that. It's literally putting brakes on the minivan. It's doing the most basic stuff. And I remember just at one point thinking, this isn't very fun, but then I kind of just realized, but it is needed, it is necessary, and I found a lot of joy in that. So
awesome. Well, I mean, that's a great way to start. I mean, was it a family business that you started a shop started at, or how did the transition come to be where eventually you became the owner?
Sure, absolutely. So the business was I'm in West Bend, Wisconsin. So it was a shop since 1965. It was started by a gentleman called Ralph Schmidt, and it was called Schmidt Safety Center from 65 until 83. And that's when my old boss bought it, Roger, in 1983, changed the name to Auto Safety Center. And in 1995, I believe, I started working for him in the high school co-op program. So I would go to school for half a day, and then the other half I would spend in the shop, and I would get paid and get credits for it. So that's how I got started there, and went through tech school, got a 2-year degree, and the shop was we did just undercar service. So we did brakes, suspension, some exhaust, alignments. That was it. I mean, we didn't do oil changes. I mean, we would do an oil change if the customer said, "Hey, you're putting tires on my car. Can you change the oil right away?" We would do that. He wouldn't take in just oil changes. Wouldn't take in tune-ups. Wouldn't take in, at that point, check engine lights were a thing. So wouldn't take any of that in. And so I had a 2-year degree. This sounds impressive. It doesn't really sound too impressive when I say 2-year degree. But anyway, I went to school and I learned how to do some of this stuff, and I wanted to work in a shop that did that. So I took a job at another shop in town, and I worked there for a couple years until that shop was like, going to close down. And at that point, I was in it 8 years in the business, and I was like, I think I want to open up my own shop. And looked around and looked at a couple places. And finally, I wasn't finding anything. And I was like, well, I need a plan B. So I'm like, I'm just going to go back to Auto Safety Center. And I had heard he was looking for somebody. So I'm like, well, I'll just go back and I'll at least do that. At least I have a job for my wife and my we had a baby at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I did that. I went back, walked through the door, and literally within the first 5 minutes, he goes, "Have you ever thought about owning your own shop?" And I was like, it was like one of those like divine God moments, because here I was like trying and pushing and trying to find, hey, where can I open up a shop? And then finally I was like, I had given up, and I'm like, well, I'll go and do this. At least I have money. At least I
Yep.
have, I know what to expect. And literally he throws that out there. And I was like, okay, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. So it took about 2 years to get the deal done. And the reason it took 2 years is because Kelsey, when you're a young person and you have a single income and you have a baby, really banks don't really want to give you any money. So, I
Yep.
mean, I went to bank after bank after bank, and I got told no so many times. And again, I was just, about to give up and thinking about, what's the next step for me? This obviously isn't working. And at the whole time, I was keeping my boss, in the loop, and, I had hit every bank in town. And finally, there was a banker um, that was new to the bank that I was approaching.
Mhm.
And he's like, you know what? You've been to all these other banks. He listened to my stories. Like, you've been to all these other banks. He's like, let's see if we can't get this pushed through. And he took a genuine interest in me.
Mhm.
And he's like, you know what? We really need to get some money down. Is there anybody you can loan the money from? But we need like 25 grand. You have to put some money down to get this deal to go. And I'm like, no, there's nobody. And so I told my boss that, and I'm like, we're running into this snag. And finally, like a day later, he says, you know what? How about I just give you the 25 grand? You hold it in your account, you keep it for 6 months, and you use that as your down payment. We'll go ahead and we'll increase the sale price 25 grand, and I'll get my money back, at that point. He said, just one thing, don't leave the country. So I was like, okay. So that was the most money I've ever had in my bank account, and I put it in there, and we
Oh,
sat on it for 6 months, and we were able to get the deal done. But in the process of doing the deal, the banker who believed in me, he told me something when we were getting close to the finish line, and it blew my mind. He goes, Joe, um, you're going to get this deal done, and then it's going to be exciting to watch when you got 2 or 3 of these stores. And I was like, what? There's no way. Like, it wasn't even on my radar. It wasn't
uh,
even on my radar. I'm like, let's just get this one done.
yeah.
But, now that I have 4 stores, I actually reached out to him and said, dude, I got 4 stores. Like, you told me at that time when I was just a young kid, like, and you kind of like spoke that into me, and I didn't believe you, but here I am. Just thank you for giving me a shot. Thank you for pulling the strings. Thank you for believing in me. And it's one of those full circle moments, just going back to it, like, wow. So
That's super cool. That's super amazing. And what I mean, obviously, like with a young family having a baby, going into entrepreneurship is stressful because again, there's a lot that's constant. So what I guess what has made you want to even get into like starting your own thing? Like you mentioned, like, yeah, I mean, working was the fallback, but you still need to get a greater goal. Like I want to start my own thing. Like
yeah.
why?
Yeah, I think it was just being naive.
Oh,
Honestly, we think we look at the boss and like, man, he's got it made. Like, he's,
mhm.
and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the reality was we were a 2 income family. My wife was working. We just had a baby. We
Mhm.
wanted to become a single income family so she could stay home with the baby.
Yep.
And we saw this as a vehicle to get there. So we ran the numbers and like, well, if I can make this, that'll be my income plus a portion of yours. Plus, we're going to save on daycare. So it was a matter of doing it because I wanted to have some freedom. And and freedom doesn't come when you start your business. You have to earn it.
Earn it.
And the faster you can earn it and make good decisions, make good hires, the faster you can have freedom. And I think one of the biggest things that was true in my story is that there was no freedom for the first 5 to 8 years. Like, it was not like we would shut down so I could go on vacation. And
Mhm.
that's what my last boss did. So just
Yeah.
following his model, in some areas, other areas I didn't follow his model. Like, we were doing, all makes and models. We were doing check engine lights. We were expanding there. We actually had a computer and we were doing computer ROs. I mean, when I took over, Kelsey, he was still handwriting everything. So it's funny that, I saw, okay, we're going to put a computer system in and do
Mhm.
that, which is a no brainer. But, the thought of like, trying to get the shop to a place where I could have time off without having to shut it down didn't occur to me. I'm like, well, if that worked for him, then that, it should work for me. So it's weird how I latched on to some things that he did and other things I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. No, that is absolutely awesome. And so obviously you took over and now you have four shops. So what was the journey like between, hey, how long did you have the first one before you started increasing shops, and what did that look like?
Yeah, the journey, in my opinion, was long.
Mm,
I had been so by the time I bought the shop, I had been in the industry 10 years, and we bought the shop as old 3 bay old gas station, and in 2012, I had it for I had it for about 7 years. At that point, we moved to a different location, bigger space,
mm,
and we did that in 2012. That was a big deal. Um, Still very hard, is very active in the business. Basically, using today's parts to pay, part sales to pay last month's parts bills.
mm,
Um, and didn't really have a good grasp of like financials from the aspect of like a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement. I was pretty good at looking at our shop metrics, our KPIs, and our shop management program, and running the business off of that.
mm,
Um, but yeah, we moved in 2012 to a newer location. 2017, I was able to buy that building, which was great. Again, a stretch. Um, and very, very, we had to get a little creative on getting it financed, but we were able to get it done. I was still
mm.
very active in the business. I was the manager. I had a service writer at the time and three technicians, and we were probably doing, $700,000 a year. So weren't doing a whole lot. And honestly, I got, I'll use the term bored, but really what it was is I just got to the point where we couldn't do anymore. I thought I had tried everything, and this is just my lot in life. This is how we're going to be in this market. In my market, there was a big player. They had two locations. They were really good, and I always felt like I'll never be as good as them. And so this is my lot in life. I'm just going to be a number two in my market. And so I started to grow bored. And when you're bored, it can mean one of two things. One, you're making more money than you've ever made, or two, you're not really happy with it. So you're starting to look at other opportunities to supplement your income. And a deal came across my desk from a friend of mine who just opened up a store in a community about 50 minutes from ours. And it was a smoking deal for somebody who didn't have a ton of money. I got in for like 10 grand. I leased the business, and I leased the real estate which he had owned. And I took over a second location because I remember saying, if I can't get any further in this location, then I'm going to do another one, and that'll be the one that blows up because the competition isn't as good as I perceived it. And so I
Yeah.
didn't really do it um, in addition to. So when doing another location, you always want to do it in addition to. Like store one is locked in, solid. It's printing money. It's in good shape. You have good leadership. You don't need to be there, and you say, okay, I'm going to do an additional location in addition to. What I
Mhm.
did was it was instead of. So I had store one, wasn't happy with it. So instead of getting this to where it needed to go, because my limiting beliefs were we can't do anymore, I did another store. And we weren't even ready for it. I didn't have the financial ability. I didn't have the leadership structure. And it was just one bad thing after the next, after the next, after the next. And 18 months of pain and heartache. And I ended up getting evicted. The good friend who gave me a good deal ended up evicting me from that location and moving on to another operator. I had to come back to store one and address the reality of we now it's now or never. Like it was a pivotal moment where this could take us out. We were
Mm.
behind on a lot of things, and when your back is up against the wall and you have nowhere to go, that's the best time to start moving forward. And that's what we did.
Percent. No, I absolutely love that. So again, there's nothing. I mean, when you watch Shark, I don't know if you watch Shark Tank a lot, but like the usually the businesses that have the most success is like they're not like doing something else. It's like they're like, hey, I they took a lot of great risks, and where like most people are like, "What are you thinking? What are you doing?" Like that risk, like they'll take like second mortgages on their homes and things like that to make it work, which at times again is very very risky. I'm not like recommending doing those things, but when people tend to do those things, there's really no other option but going forward and making it succeed, and that's where like again you do what it takes. All of a sudden things click in your brain, and you're like, "Hey, I can do this," and then you just make it work and things succeed and like, oh, these are the things that I wish I like. Again, that's where I'm so big now on like, hey, finding a mentor, finding these people that probably did those things, had to unlock it, and they're like, oh, you can now skip those mistakes by just doing this instead. Like you don't need to take the second mortgage on your house because if instead you just follow these rules, it grows way faster and you don't need to have that stress that then like I have to personally deal with. So that's where again I think people are so valuable. And I know you're currently a coach as well and giving some people this advice. But how did you rebound? So obviously like yeah, it was a lot of licking of wounds of like, hey, second location, look at me, didn't work. Had to go back
Hmm.
down to one. Then eventually though, obviously you've grown to four. So like what again shifted? What clicked? Was there any big change that you're like, oh, I need to do this. This happened, and now I can grow from there.
Yeah, I think what happened to me, there was multiple things, but I think the biggest thing was the simple fact that, when you hit your rock bottom is a good foundation to build again.
Mm,
And really, I was literally in the midst of the scariest thing in my life, the biggest failure of my life.
mm,
I'd been in the business now 15 years, and I had attended 20 groups and all of this, and like I was really, I felt like I knew a fair amount about auto repair and
yeah,
how to run a shop. And this was a very humbling experience. And I think it humbled me to the point of, humility is basically just an open mind. And all of a sudden it was like, I'm at rock bottom. This is as embarrassing as it's going to get. And there was a part of me that was like, what in this event can I take and how can I make this a positive? And I'm like, well, I can learn a lot and I can make sure that I do not waste this pain because I don't want to do it again. And it was just basically like, what do I need to do? At that moment where it's just like you're broken and you're like, what do I need to do to get out of this? And and I had been a member of Shop Fix Academy. I joined as a client in April of 2018, right after I had gotten two stores because I was like, man, I'm going to need some help. And so I was a client there, and they really helped, with some mindset stuff and giving me the tools to get store one where it needed to be. So not only it could become profitable, but have enough profit to help pay off the debt that I incurred or got from the store two. So I think the biggest thing for me at that point was just, having nowhere else to go. So we started um, marketing, something that I hadn't done. That marketing resulted in cars coming in. We addressed our pay plan to make it more incentivized for our technicians. So the more cars meant the more money, not only for the shop but for them. Same with our front of house, and we started just embracing, trying to get every single car that we could, and whether it was an oil change or whether it was a diagnostic test or whether it was brakes, we just got very aggressive, and figured out a way. Whereas before we would limit our schedule because we're like, we don't want to get overwhelmed. Well, we got overwhelmed and we had to push through it. But I think those were the biggest things that we did.
awesome. Is there like a certain new revenue number that you got to with Shop One before you're like, hey, I think we're ready now to start growing again, or how did that all take place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of times when I tell this story, people are like, "Oh, in the beginning they were like, are you going to have another second store?" And I would respond with, maybe. I said, probably. I want to get back on the bike. I don't want to, I don't want this to define my multi-store, you
Mhm.
know, life or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that I'm maximized out of my first store. And we have 9 bays. So it was
Oh,
like we had a lot of runway. I
yeah.
mean, literally when I went to open up that second store, we had 5 lifts and I had 3 technicians, and we were doing roughly 70 grand a month. I mean, we were nowhere near capacity.
Mhm.
And so I think the biggest thing is like getting that store to capacity. So in other words, for us, a capacity means, a technician in every bay minus the alignment rack, technician in every bay, and at least 80% productive out of that bay. So if they're there in the building for 40 hours, they should at a minimum have 32 hours billed every week. And that would be our goal for capacity. But the other thing too is having human capacity. So, making sure that you have the leadership in place so it can operate without you, making sure that you have a solid manager, that manager is capable of leading the team, having hard conversations, holding people accountable, praising people when they do a good job. And I think that's a bigger thing too. What I've found is that as we're adding stores, one of the biggest constraints is just making sure that we have the right people in place. That we have somebody ready to go to manage that next store. That we have enough technicians in our bullpen and in our company that we can move somebody over there and not completely cripple other locations. So
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard from multiple multi-shop owners where it's just like, yeah, that trickiest bit when increasing is finding that right leadership to trust, because there's only one of you. You can't be at every store at all the times. I mean, maybe some people are lucky where like, yes, they're close to each other. We're like, hey, yeah, throughout the day, I drive through every single one. I personally don't think that's feasible and very, very wise to be on the road constantly that much. And I much more rather create a business that again is efficient without yourself. But how then do you have that trust? Because again, when you're a one shop owner and you went through the grind of like building what you built, and now you're like, hey, it's efficient. I'm proud of this, and now we have to go, and now we're going to increase to another one. I need to now trust someone else to keep this going. Like, how do you again create that? Is it just like a nope? You just take the risk. This is the person that you have, and you trust them and train them. Or I've heard that for a lot of people, like that's the hardest bit for them. Is like I can't just allow someone else to do this.
yeah. Yeah, I think what we've found is that we like to promote from within, and we like to grow our own when it comes to leaders. So for us, we want to. Every manager is going to start as a service advisor.
Mhm.
I don't care if you think you're the best of the best. You're going to come into our company and you're going to start at least as a service advisor. You may not stay there long, but you're
Yeah.
gonna you're gonna you're gonna prove to me that you can do that job, and you can do it well. And at that point, it's like, okay, obviously they know what they're doing in this role. We would then probably give them some leadership. But I think to growing your own is important, getting that person in, but then also providing them the guardrails for their growth. Like, so for me, it's like we've established our core values, and our core values are our guardrails. So our core values are super simple. It's character, chemistry, and competency in that order. So character, chemistry, and competency, and that's how we do everything. So that's how we have a hard conversation. That's how we show up to work every day. That's how we serve our customers. So giving them those guardrails to operate in kind of helps. Like, this is our culture. This is who we are. These are our core values. Bringing those core values into everyday conversations, into everyday actions, and referring back to them kind of helps reinforce that culture and that structure that you're building. So you can know, hey, are you operating with a high level of character right now? And if you're
Mhm.
not, well, then you're outside the guardrails, and you need to come back in. So that's one of the tools that we've used that helps. Plus, again, working somebody, and we don't give them the title of manager right away. They have to earn that. They have to be a performer. They have to be the right fit. We've had the luxury of being able to move people through that process. And I think, you know, you can start a store, and if you have a solid manager, you're going to be one step ahead. I think that's one of the bigger things is the manager has to be the person who knows what the company's about, upholds our standards, doesn't tolerate, things that are in misalignment with our core values. And if you don't have a manager that's doing that, then your store is just going to be running rickshaw. And they may hold it together for a while, but they're not going to hold it together for the long haul, and they're not going to actually grow that store to its capacity. We've had managers before that come in, and they don't they, they seem to pass the test, but then they start to wane off, and you start to notice it when that store goes from 150,000 a month to 200,000 a month to knocking on the door 300,000 a month. Like there are some leadership changes that need to happen. That leader needs to level up because the leader that can do a store to 150 needs to level up to get that store to operate at 250 to 300,000. And that's where we start to see it gets a little, we call it the wheels start falling off, the wheel is shaking and everything. It comes down to they need to continue growing because their leadership isn't enough to get them to that 250 to $300,000 mark.
And so I guess my next question would be how do you grow these leaders? Again, there's only one of you. And so like is
Mm-hmm.
there certain checks and balances that you have with each leader? Is there certain again, is it just based on the metrics alone that you're like, okay, this leader is doing what I think they're doing, or how are you feeling out the leadership and growing them?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for our advantage was my number two, my district manager,
Mhm.
has been with me for 8 years, and so he started as a service advisor. Then he was my store manager at store one, and so he's worked with me. And I got to tell you what, I'm super pleased with that guy. Like the person that he was when he started with me as a service advisor is not the person he is today, and that's a good thing. Like
Mhm.
he has been on a path of growth, not only just like business growth, but personal growth, personal development, making better decisions, choosing better activities, deciding to listen to that audiobook and having a hard conversation and leading with heart. And I think that's the biggest thing for a leader. You pour into others. And if you keep pouring into them, hopefully they are going to pour into the people they're leading, so on and so forth. So I think that's the biggest thing, is making sure that in the beginning you're accessible and you're in the shop, you're pouring into the next person, and that's rubbing off on the whole team. So
Awesome. No, I love that. Do you think that your process can make anyone a good leader?
no, at the end of the so here's a lesson we learned, and this wasn't with a leader. This was with a technician.
Mhm.
Great technician, lived in Puerto Rico, and came over. He was actually a auto instructor in Puerto Rico, and
Wow.
very good technician, but he didn't speak any English, none.
Mm.
And so we took a chance on him, like, okay. And we tried, Google Translate and all these things. And there was just always a big barrier. And finally, we got to the point where we need to do something. And he was never going to go back to Puerto Rico. He was going to be here. Like this was his choice. He wanted to be here in this area. And I'm like, okay, well, probably probably should spend some time learning English. When he did his interview, he brought his daughter who was bilingual so she could translate.
Mhm.
And finally, we're just like, okay. So I found a tutor for him. I signed him up for classes. I pulled some strings, and we would have a tutor come and work with him after hours. And then she started doing after hours at her office or whatever. And I called to check in a couple months later, and she had just said, "Yeah, no, he hasn't been here for the last couple months. He's been busy." And so I realized at that moment that we wanted him to learn English more than he wanted to. And that was a lesson learned. Like, I can't want it more than you. You
Yeah.
have to want it. And just like learning English is hard for him, leadership is hard. You have
Mhm.
to want to have that hard conversation, hold people accountable and do things that you don't feel like doing because you need to set the example. I can't make you do that stuff. You have to make that decision to do that stuff. So
Well,
you can't make, just like any employee, like even an apprentice technician, you bring them in and they talk the talk, but do they walk the walk? And
mm.
that's something that like you have to identify, and you can't want it more than them. And I think too often in this industry, we want it more than them. So we hang on, and it doesn't work out. And we've invested 2 years of our life, and they're, doing something else that we probably could have, realized 3 months in that this isn't a good fit. They're just not the right type of person.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Because I was just curious, obviously, on your answer, everyone has different takes, and people are very strong about their process. But yeah, I think their wanton desires is like, I think it can shift, but it's definitely not. It's a very, very difficult shift to be able to be had for most people. And I think now, obviously, with the technicians needing to be younger, or like just again the workforce in general needing to be younger. I think what most people are finding is that want disparity is like, hey, the owner wants them to be this, that individual doesn't want to be that at all, and so how then? I guess what are things that we can start doing to help? 'Cause it can't just be like, well, if they don't want it, they're out. And like eventually, you don't have any other options. You're going to have to make some individuals work and create that want for them. So I guess what are your thoughts in terms of like how you continue to bridge the gap? Yes, there's going to be young individuals that are hungry, and like those are obviously the ones that you want to keep and hold on to and go after. But again, it's not always the option. Like it's going to be like, oh yeah, they have some skills, but the want isn't quite where I wish it was. So are there ways do you think that we can come up with to help foster it for them to build that and grow that for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a leader, what we can do, the best thing we can do is encourage,
Hmm.
and we can cast vision for that individual, and we can encourage them in ways that they don't see possible. Remember what I talked about my banker, like
Hmm.
talking to me about multiple. It wasn't even on my radar. I didn't even think about it. Like this is the biggest thing I was ever dealing with in my life is trying to do one store, and he's thinking about two or three, and I was like, dude, nah. But it was that encouraging and that fact that he saw something in me that I did not see in myself, and he had just mentioned it. And I think as a leader, that's what we need to do. I have a young technician who's gonna be a dad for the first time. And
Hmm.
when this technician came a couple years ago, he was kind of hot under the collar. He would butt heads a little bit, and so we had to work through that with him. And he is a great teammate now. He is an awesome teammate and valuable individual for our company. Just I can't give him enough praise of the person that he's become. And he was working on a car, and I was visiting with him one day, and I was just talking about being a dad. And he was talking about, yes, it's scary. I don't know what I'm doing. And I was just like, dude, the amount of growth that I've seen you do over these last few years and who you are as a technician and as a man, I know that you're going to be up for the task to be a good dad if you want it. I've seen you grow, and I know that you can do it. And I think it was right there because he was just insecure. I don't know. I get it. I was there. I got 4 kids, but talking some encouragement in that person, say it's going to be okay. I know you can do it. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And I think as a leader, that's the best thing that you can do. And either they're going to be receptive of that, or they're not.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with that. And I think at times for every owner, it isn't the easiest to give encouragement, especially when like numbers aren't looking good. You're dealing with way more stress and more than likely than the average team member. Like, yes, everyone has their personal lives and people deal with a lot of hard, difficult things, but like those difficult things that they're dealing with at times as the owner, you feel that too. It's just like because like they're a member of the team, you need to help fix that so that way they can contribute to the team and continue to do so. So like there's just so much that snowballs and builds. So at times I understand that yes, like it's an easy thing to say, just be encouraging, but again, it's something that as an owner you have to just work on and continue. It's like you can't just hope that someone else is going to work on it for you and like oh yeah, this district manager is gonna be way better than me, and so I don't need to worry. They'll fix everything. Like again, in a perfect world, yes, like you don't have to worry, and they will fix everything, but. Again, that's relying on that hope at times is going to be a little bit scary for most. And so I would again challenge people to like yeah, to read good books, read like or just follow other leaders that are like, hey, that the way Joe leads his shop, I want to be like that. So like, okay, go communicate with Joe. Like, go understand like what is he doing on his daily life that is allowing him to be this leader for his team, and that's where again I want to like a lot of people maybe just would disregard it, like, well, Joe's in a different place than I'll ever be, so I'm not even gonna worry. But again, like as you were speaking, Joe, you had hardships. You had times where like I'm fine being the number two in the city. Like I'm totally okay with that. But obviously now that I guarantee that isn't a thought process in your mind anymore. There's no way that you would get to as many shops as you would get to thinking that way. So again, I would challenge everyone to have those things. One last question as we go into it. So I know I'm curious in terms of how you went about going to the 4 shops, like having that courage to go again. Like, yes, you're like, it's an option, but like, how did you find the right one again? Like, I'm assuming you took a lot more, I guess, analysis in terms of what was going on, in terms of like, I don't want to make the same mistake again. Or like, I was curious in terms of that thought process, how you went about again, adding on that it's kind of what you have.
Yeah. So for me, going from one to two, then back to one, there was a lot of lessons learned there. And one of the things I think that every leader should do when they face a failure or results that they're not happy with is they should take a moment and reflect on what decisions did I make here that were good? What decisions did I make here that weren't not good? What are some things that need to change? And I did that after my first second store failed, and I kind of came up with a list. If I could do it all over again, what have I learned? And I did it in the moment because it was fresh. The pain was there, and it was very therapeutic for me. But I came up with a couple things. One of them was making sure that my first store is at capacity. Like it is at operational capacity. It's also at human capacity. We have good leaders. We have a good team, and it's performing, and everything is set. It is the model that we're going to base store two off of. So it works. It's not broken. It works, and all we're going to do is duplicate it. The other thing was having money in the bank. Like we need to make sure that store one has a cushion of a couple months of overhead in the bank, so I don't have to worry about it. And we're going to go into this next opportunity with enough money to fund it in case we run into some stormy waters as soon as we close on it or whatever. And I can have a couple months of losses there. So making sure you have the finances figured out. And the other thing is like making sure that I'm getting a good location. We want a location that's better than our first location. First locations often work even if they're not in a great market or a great like physical location, because you can bootstrap it. You can put in the work. You can do all this stuff. You can't do that when you have a second store. So it has to be a good location. What I learned too was the demographics. Like my first store was in a reasonably affluent area. And then my second store was in a completely different market that was bigger, but the median household income was about $20,000 or $30,000 less. And so I realized what worked at store one was not working at my second store because of the difference in what the people made and their expectation. Yeah. So looking at demographics was a big thing. And when you're ready, a lot of times the deal just comes along. And on my second store, it was something that we were talking about. We felt like we were ready, and I wasn't. I was looking at a bunch of options, but nothing was panning out. And we offered to, as a company, we offered to go to a retirement community or a nursing home, and we were going to do some decorating outside, Christmas lights or whatever. And I remember, I'm from Wisconsin, so if y'all haven't decorated for Christmas in a cold weather climate, you're missing out. Like you're out there, your fingers are numb, you're questioning your life's decisions. Like it is not like down south where it's like the weather is great and you can make this masterpiece in your car. No, you are out there and you're going as fast as you can, as efficient as you can, because it sucks. And so I was driving to this event that we're doing as a company to help, decorate. And I wasn't in the best mood. I'm like, man, it's dark out. It's cold. I don't want to be here. And I'm like, you know what? We made the commitment. So I'm going to follow through. I'm not backing out. I'm the leader of the company. Like I have to be there.
Yep.
And the person that was our point of contact at the nursing home, she's like, oh, Auto Safety Center. You guys have the shop in West Bend. Oh, I own a shop too. Actually, my husband does, and he's got a partner, and they're in this area, and they're thinking about retiring. And I was like, oh, well, we're looking for another location. So if they're interested, here's my card. And it was that little interaction that opened the door to an off-market deal, opened the door to my second store in a great demographic, with great traffic, an established business that had a great name. Seeing 40 or 50 cars a week. And the only reason it was seeing that little was because they had two people there. The two owners were both technicians. And we were able to put a deal together, but we walked into it, day one, we made money. Like we took over. I had two technicians that we staffed, and like, we never went backwards. I had a savings set aside, for just in case. We never needed it, because we always produced income, and we just went. We started at 40 cars a week. Next thing you know, we're at 60 cars a week. We're dropping a technician or two, and we did a remodel, and the rest was history. So um, the lesson there is you never know when that opportunity is going to come, but when you're ready, it'll show up, and sometimes it'll come in the places where you're like, I don't really want to go and do this, but you do, and you're like, that's why I was supposed to be here. I'm glad I showed up.
Yeah, no, I love it. At times, divine intervention just kind of comes along the way. We're like, hey, like that is why there's a greater purpose to a lot that we do, and if we're doing good, usually that good will find us. So,
Mhm.
Joe, thank you so much for being with us today and being with me and sharing your story and your journey and all the amazing things that you've been able to accomplish. So obviously, it hasn't been easy. There's been hardships along the way, but you definitely have come out of it very, very strong and obviously with success. And so, one parting gift I like to ask the guests to leave for people is a go-to book that maybe you've read that has been impactful for you or you've seen be impactful for other owners. Is there a book that comes to mind that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think that leaders are readers. So, having a good library is very beneficial. Maybe even a good audiobook selection. Um, but I think, let's see, the most impactful. I would go with um, and I just read it here actually. So I'm going to go with the recent read, not something I've
Yep.
read in the past,
Uh,
which is the Four Disciplines of Execution. So just read this, blew my mind. The difference between lead measures and lag measures. A lot of times we run our businesses off of KPIs, but
mhm.
here's the thing, Kelsey, KPIs are lag measures. We need to work on lead measures, which are the behaviors that create the KPIs. So,
Mm.
like, it was a great read. Recommended.
Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, we'll add that down in the comment section here. And for those that maybe want to reach out to you, Joe, they're like, hey, yeah, this story resonated with me, or I think Joe can be an invaluable person that I need to chat with. What is the best way to reach you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me would be through my email, which would be Joe Valind, VALIND, at autosafetycenterwb.com.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll also throw that down in the description there. But again, thank you so much, Joe, for being with me today. For those that are continuing to watch, thank you for watching and listening. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. That helps us a lot. But I'm Kelsey Outram with Lift Auto Repair Marketing. I'll talk to you guys again next time. See you. Bye.